This is United Medical ACO weekly event, and my name is Kemal Erkan. I'm the chairman of United Medical ACO. Before I go into the United States overall numbers, since this is a local Delaware event, I do want to share what's happening in the state of Delaware. Now, Tanner, you and I, we've been actually providing these updates. It's almost a full year now, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, correct. Maybe a little over a year at this point.
So the way that I'm seeing it, I think we got very comfortable to a point. We got our vaccines, everyone got comfortable, and then even we stopped maybe paying attention to the numbers in terms of presenting those. But what's interesting that's happening these days is in Delaware, in a smaller scale, so the percentage of test positives. So right now, as of yesterday, we are at 3.3%. Now, this number, I'm going to take you from here and just look at where we were.
Yeah, just a few weeks ago.
So it was down to 1%, so I'm pushing for 1% there. Okay. So that was June 28th. About a month ago, it was 1%. So percentage of test positive. So we went from 1 to 3.3%. That's a big jump. Now, this jump is also important because new positive cases are increasing. So we are at 78. And then if we were to look at the June, the way that we did, that time it was 19. So 4 times more cases and 3.3 times more higher positive cases. So this is happening even though with the vaccination and all that. So I do want to actually give this update for our people who live in Delaware. Current hospitalization, COVID-related, that's pretty steady. And I'm hoping that people can pay a little bit more attention. I think we got, again, it just comes down to people being more comfortable. Now, so when we did this, we stopped the animation here. So now we are trying to get to the 75% vaccination rate, and then now we're about 7 months away from that. That puts us into end of January, right?
And that's something that we've been keeping track of, as you mentioned, for months now, and have continued to watch it fall backwards and get further and further away from us, which is certainly concerning.
Yeah, so now what we want to do today is we want to discuss these issues and why it's happening, even the vaccination, why we are at that point. But we have, prior to that, we have some updates. So Tanner, I saw this where when you have a mixed, when we say mixed, we are not mixing them at the same time, but someone who has maybe 2 shots of Pfizer, and they have the booster as AstraZeneca, they have a pretty strong efficacy.
Cool. Yeah. And this was something you had brought up. I found was pretty interesting. So doing a little more reading into it, my 2 takeaways on this, I think one are with the produced or higher produced T-cell responses from a Pfizer shot followed by an AstraZeneca shot. That level kind of mimics the one of 2 Pfizer shots. So that's going to be really helpful for areas and countries that might have a logistical burden on how many vaccines they can get of maybe a Pfizer. Maybe a 2-shot isn't necessarily available for everyone. So that is great news when it comes to actually being able to kind of bridge that gap logistically. And now the other thing I thought of too, my initial thought was, you may remember the AstraZeneca shot was one that was getting looked at for the possibility of blood clot relations to it. So there was certainly a little bit of a drop off there with the kind of how many people were actually coming in to get vaccinated or said that they would be willing to get vaccinated from that shot. So this kind of helps, in my opinion.
Do you remember that percentage of that, how ridiculously low that was?
Correct. That's a good point. It was 0.008% of cases in that study, which, though, like we discussed, still created a hesitancy to get a vaccine. So I think being some of those people that still at this point might be hesitant, if they have the option to get that other shot, then I think that's great news.
So now I'm going to go back to the updates. So because one of the most maybe frequently discussed stuff right now is the Delta variant. So now with the Delta, why this is important, what makes it different than the others. Are you able to kind of get into that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. So as we know, the coronavirus is certainly mutating, and that's why we're seeing some of these other variants that are coming about now. These mutations are happening. The more and more the virus is spreading, the more chances it has to actually mutate. So right now we're very concerned, or the most recent concern would be this Delta variant. So it's a little different from some of the past ones that we've seen. You can see here it's definitely a little faster when it comes to how easily it's transmitted. We're definitely seeing an increase in transmissibility for the virus with the Delta variant. But I think at the end of the day, what we really want to focus in on is the vaccine is proven to still continue to be the strong, most effective measure against this variant. So that is certainly going to be something we want to dive in a little deeper to, because there are a lot of, right now you're seeing Delta everywhere in the news, right? It's certainly increasing. There's been an uptick in cases that have been due to this variant, as it is the most prominent variant in the United States right now.
And the reason actually Delta becomes more problematic for certain population is unvaccinated population. And just looking at this graph here, this diagram, as it's rather like a higher share of the Delta, more vulnerable, and then these are the places where we have less vaccination rates. So now the other thing that I think the other important image that we shared with our providers, Anthony Anugu presented this for us, is the comparison of the change in new COVID cases in the last 4 weeks and the percent of population that is unvaccinated. If you look at the darker red and then match them with the darker red areas, it does kind of make sense, right?
Yeah, we're certainly seeing an overlay for these two graphs when it comes to these metrics. So really the takeaway here is what we're visually seeing in areas and pockets of the country where the percent of the population that is unvaccinated is higher. We're seeing those are the areas where the hot spots are popping up right now. So as I mentioned, the Delta variant is, it accounts for roughly 80% of all new cases in the United States right now. And we're seeing that those areas that are unvaccinated are being the hotspots for where this virus is actually spreading currently.
So like, I think Florida is now kind of, they are, I think their governor is just announcing that they're gonna push the vaccination a little bit more. As you can see, the new cases are increasing a lot more in there.
Florida is our hotspot. I did see that. I think that was last week. Governor DeSantis came out and started to kind of go back into the vaccination push. And we're seeing that in a handful of different places, not just Florida right now. A lot of like what you're highlighting right now, that Southern belt, we're seeing an increased presence with their vaccination pushes and efforts from some public officials there, which is certainly driven by these numbers.